This weekend, Irma will hit Florida, dropping an estimated 12 to 20 inches of rain. Mandatory evacuations are in place for several cities across the state, and 1,700 troopers are working around the clock to help move traffic as people leave their homes. Joining me now on the phone is the mayor of Miami Gardens, Florida, Oliver Gilbert. Good morning, Mayor Gilbert.
Good morning. How are you all doing today?
We are doing better than you. I'm feeling right now as you get prepared for the possibility of Hurricane Irma hitting you. What preparations is your city taking to prepare for the worst?
I mean, it's multi-layered. It's working with the county with regard to evacuations of people who have specific sensibilities or are in specific areas where we know there's going to be some danger. It's setting up the shelters, is passing out sandbags yesterday, and a lot of it is also preparation for the storm afterwards, setting up where we know we have to have people and ice stations and water stations, because there's going to be some need for essentials right after that, probably that people won't be able to meet themselves. It's going around with our big trucks and draining the areas, draining the actual drains in the streets, so that they are as clear as possible. We know that with a storm of this size, it won't be able to absorb all of the water, but we can make it. We can mitigate the flooding as much as possible.
Other than immediate needs after the storm hits, is there a plan in place to help residents recover after the storm hits? There are not a plan. There are plans in place. The city has a part. The city works with the county works with the state works with FEMA, and then you have the people like Pastor Jackson at Antioch Church and Wayne Lomax at the Fountain, who've already started to organize their members into volunteers, because we know that there are going to be people. The storm won't hurt everybody proportionally, but we know as a community that's how we survive these storms. We survive it as a community. So we've handled storms here in South Florida, and we've had loss of life and loss of property. We know how the story ends. The story ends with there being some damage, some tragedy, but us coming together as a community and rebuilding. And so whatever the damage is, we're preparing to do that. Mayor, will evacuations remain in place until Hurricane Jose passes?
You know what? They haven't made that call yet, and I know they're tracking Hurricane Jose. I'm hopeful that Jose just decides that he don't want to come here. That would just be Jose. They want you in the middle of the ocean. Someone's calling your name. I would prefer us not take a 1-2 punch, but that decision hasn't been made yet. It probably, if I were guessing, I say if you were evacuated for Irma and Jose actually stays on the same track as Irma, I would say they probably still are going to evacuate you, because those areas are low-lying areas, they're coastal areas, they're areas that, from a location and geographical perspective, they have a sensibility that places people's lives in harm. So they probably will still be evacuated.
Mayor Gilbert, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We wish you and all of the residents of your city the best of luck. Just a quick update on help for Hurricane Harvey victims. The Senate approved a $15 billion disaster relief bill. The measure also lifts the debt ceiling and keeps the government operating for an additional 3 months. The House must now pass the bill before it lands on Donald Trump's desk. Coming up, I'm going to go to my panel. Sorry about that. Panel, what do you think? We've got hurricanes everywhere. A lot of people are going to need help. What do you think is going to happen with the Trump administration?
Well, you know, I think one of the things that this should really elevate for our community is the importance of climate change, right?
And that it actually exists, right?
And that it actually
I keep looking at the map and I'm saying, how can anyone actually tell me that they don't believe that climate change exists?
Let's just look at the areas. I mean, we know about Katrina in New Orleans. We know about Harvey in Houston. These are areas that are populated, very densely populated, with high African-American, Hispanic populations. Now we look at the Caribbean. We look at Antigua and Barbuda and St. Martin. This is really affecting our community, and it's something that we can't ignore, and we can't act like it's just something that doesn't exist within the parameters of our community. It's something that's very important that we have to make sure that we keep on our public policy agenda as well.
Yeah. Amber, what do you think? I've been watching some of the news coverage. I mean, other than programming like here, like NewsOne Now, I have been struck by the fact that I don't see the stories being told of African Americans and how they are doing.
in Houston being told, and I'm hearing stories here and there, but it's all anecdotal about, you know, very courageous African Americans, particularly millennials, who are out there trying to evacuate people, save people, but we're not really seeing that coverage. It's nice to see all the coverage about people coming together of all races, but I'm very interested in hearing the stories of how our people are doing.
Yeah, I think even what you're saying, we're learning in real time that racism doesn't stop at policy or at lack of resources through healthcare or welfare services to communities, but also environmental racism is real. Instead of our government giving away military gear to these places, what does it look like for them to invest in more services and equipment and gear like boats and rescue services to these places? Because again, low-income people will be impacted the most by storms like this. And I am honored that my generation is chipping in and trying to push these narratives to tell how this is directly impacting Black folks as well.
So, question for you. So, you know, if you're a policymaker, what do you tell the African American community? You know, what do you say? You go to our folks and you say, okay, we know these natural disasters hit. It's like anything else. White people get a cold, we get the flu. Yeah. What is the best thing that we can do to take action as a community rather than waiting for the government to help us to be prepared in advance for these disasters?
You know, accountability of our elected officials is one thing, but as you mentioned earlier, you know, 51% of Black Americans live in the South. I mean, so we're hit hardest by this. You say you get a cold, we get a flu. When they're doing evacuation orders, you know, that's great if you have the money and places to go. Right. But when your family lives in the South and you don't have the money to go anywhere else, you know, you're kind of stuck around. So you're exactly right. I don't think it's getting enough coverage, I guess you can say, as far as the plight, I guess, of Black Americans during these natural disasters. But as far as what we can do, like I said, you know, I am a conservative, so obviously I don't always like to rely on the government for things, but I do think that our community, as you mentioned, millennials, have a role. I remember when I was at Howard that we did our spring break back during that time. We went and helped victims of Hurricane Katrina and stuff like that. So we have the power to do it ourselves as well. I think it kind of takes a cooperation between the government and private sector to get the job done.
Yeah, at Howard University, I just got an email, since I'm an alum. Also, they will be sending students to Houston as we speak.
Weekdays on TV One.
I will never lie to you.
Oh my God.
Roland Martin.
He doesn't want to talk to us. He wants to ignore us.
Uncensored.
Hell no. That ain't gonna cut it, boo.
Unapologetic.
No, that is fundamentally false. You are wrong.
Unfiltered.
He wants an America where we all look alike. He ain't talking about Black people.
Unrelenting.
You better go work out, because you got a fight on your hands.
NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Weekdays at 7 a.m. on TV One.